Now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can stream DirecTV satellite-free.
These humans can stream all the top-rated national news channels on DirecTV, and now with no satellite dish.
This just in. Weather, sports, election coverage. DirecTV has it all, but something is missing. The satellite dish.
What are you doing?
I'm reporting the news. Back to you, Bob.
Here's some news. You're a buffoon.
Stream the top-rated national news channels. No satellite dish. Visit DirecTV.com. Internet required. Top-rated news based on 2023 Nielsen ratings.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, you might rightfully be focused on Halloween right now, but there's another important and equally scary time of year happening right now in Allegheny County. It is budget season. Our region's top elected official just released a proposed budget for 2025, and it includes our first tax increase in more than a decade. Today, we're sitting down with County Executive Sara Innamorato to talk about why she pitched something she knows is going to be super unpopular, what's at stake if it does not pass, and how you can get involved in what happens next. It's Monday, October 28th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Sara Innamorato, thank you again for having us in your conference room here downtown.
Yeah, welcome.
I would love to hear from you how you think we got here, like needing this now $2.2 million tax increase, and whether you knew it would be coming when you were running for office when you first took over in January.
Yeah, so I got to provide some comic relief for the Off the Record show about a week back. And I said that, it was at the Biome. That's where I was sworn in. And I was like, it was a great day. Not only was it, my family was there, I got to share in this momentous and historic occasion, but it was the last day I was ignorant about the, 60 million plus deficit that we were presently running and what turned out to be an $81 million deficit. So
that's a really tough second day in office.
True. I think I was probably a few weeks in before we really had that conversation, but still it was early on in the administration. And of course you say, how did we get here? Mm-hmm. Right? Because I've been in office for 3 minutes. I didn't create an $81 million deficit. And when we went back and looked, it was because 4 out of the last 5 budgets that were passed by county council, many members who are still serving who passed this budget, and the previous county executive had introduced budgets that spent more than the revenue it brought in. And the way that we have been able to get by is because we had about $600 million in federal aid through CARES and through the American Rescue Plan that was used to plug holes.
All that federal COVID money.
Mm-hmm. And so that is now expired, right? All of that money has to be out the door so that we don't return it to the federal government. And it's that coupled with, other economic headwinds, like the challenges to the commercial properties downtown, and there is a level of, higher levels of vacancy. So property owners are challenging their assessed value, so they're getting higher returns.
The buildings themselves are still worth the same amount of money. They're still shiny and pretty, but there's nobody in them, so they're technically worth, air quotes, worth less.
Yep. So that has been a challenge, and we're paying out more money because right when they win their court case, we have to cut them a check. The taxpayers cut them a check for
sort of like a tax refund.
Mm-hmm. So they get that. So we've experienced more than the previous administration had planned for and put in reserves. And then just the cost of everything is going up, just like it is for families. So, for example, the cost of asphalt has gone up 50% in the last 5 years, and we have held steady without a tax increase. So it just costs more to do basic functions that the county has always been responsible for delivering for the people of Allegheny County. So, those are the challenges that we're facing and kind of how we got here. I think think the positive of all of this is that we're not alone, that there are other municipalities, school districts, counties throughout the Commonwealth and throughout the nation that are also looking at their budgets now and saying, wow, we've skirted by the federal money was great, but now the party's over, and we have to figure out how we are going to move forward and maintain core services and also a strong foundation so that we can actually grow our economy, grow our population, and support people who need it most.
But it's such a difficult sell, as you know, to constituents. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow to think that taxes have to go up for something. What have you tried to cut, or what has been proposed for a cut that maybe will help people feel like the county has done everything it can and this is the last resort?
Absolutely. So, right, I've been in office for 10 months. And we've been operating not necessarily at full complement when it comes to all my cabinet positions being filled. And, we only got a county manager about a month and a half ago.
Which is the person that does the budget.
Yeah. Our essentially chief operating officer of the county. We also have to remember that the county is typically the 5th or 6th largest employer in the county. So we are a major operation. We have 6,000 employees. So, we have a tremendous amount of internal infrastructure that we have to maintain, and also a tremendous amount of opportunity to find efficiencies in centralizing functions across the 20 departments that we have and the number of authorities that we also touch. So, I came into the office and I said, all right, let's break down silos. Let's have our directors meet in the same room once a month to hear from me directly, to hear from my office, to share ideas, to collaborate more, to say, where can we find efficiencies? Where can we collaborate and deliver better results for the people of this county, but also save money?
Are there any specifically that you can point to?
We've been doing a lot of work on how to pair the work that the health department is doing and Department of Human Services around the opioid money. So thinking about, delivering solutions to help compassionately address the opioid epidemic.
And we're getting that money, I think, through the state, but it's coming in kind of as a trickle.
Yeah.
It's not a lump sum.
Exactly. Like the tobacco settlement funds.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what the case was based on. So, things like that. We've looked at contracts that we can end that are no longer serving us and things that we can do in-house. So we found a $3 million technology contract that we just don't need. It's not keeping our system more secure, and we have the expertise internally. So that contract is winding down.
County Controller Corey O'Connor has pointed specifically to contracts as being a big point that the county can continue to streamline. He said he's going to maybe do an audit on that next year.
Absolutely. And the number of contracted employees we have. So there are people who look like county employees on the surface. They have a county phone, a county email address, and we'd love to bring all of those people in as official employees. That means they would pay into the pension, have the same health care, and be part of the system, and it would help us save money in the long run. So we're looking at all of those efficiencies. We've also created a grants department. So we hired a grants manager for the first time in the county history so that we can help our smaller departments go after more grants that help us offset money that we would normally put into those departments from the general fund. So we're more aggressively going after federal and state grants, as well as, working with our philanthropic community here to say, how can they essentially give us money that we can use as a match to a state or federal grant. So for every dollar, for example, in Department of Human Services, if we put $1 up as a match, we can typically turn that into $5 that we put to work in our community for teen mental health support, for supporting families with childcare, for helping people who are going through recovery, for reentry job programs, for helping unhoused neighbors. So, it's a really good deal for the taxpayer if we can get that money, match it with state and federal money, and then put it back to work in our community with our community-based organizations as partners.
Grants feel kind of unsexy, but they do really stretch the dollar in terms of how our municipalities, our governments can pay for things. I'm curious if you're still committed to, day one, you get inaugurated, but day two, you learn about this huge problem. And as part of that week, you had this big announcement that we're raising the minimum wage here in the county, and we're going to fill 1,000 jobs. I'm sure you've made a lot of progress on that between since then and now, but are you still committed to that number, knowing that now we have to find so many more efficiencies?
Yeah, so we are looking at, all of this takes time too. So we're looking at open positions and saying what positions no longer serve us. And we're having conversations with the unions that represent those departments and seeing what positions that we can end or reallocate those dollars. But the long and short of it is that we were paying people $15 an hour to start at the county. And these are some key positions. And we said on day one that we were going to invest in our employees because they make this county run. So we moved to $18 an hour, which we have to remember is a little over $41,000 a year. So
it's still not
a $41,000 a year
position
salary, right? And again, we are a major employer and we are never going to pay as much as the private sector. And we understand that. So we added more vacation time and we removed barriers to entry for people because it costs us if people turn over regularly. So this is something the private sector and large nonprofits really do understand. And we're trying to adopt a lot of those best practices and put them to work in the county to save money in the long run.
I mean, do you feel like you're going to be able to keep some of those? Like, one thing I was struck by, County Council already held one public hearing about this. I believe they're doing another one on maybe another couple this week, talking about like PRT, for example, which is an authority. It's not directly in your purview, but of course it is very, very related. Every dollar that the county spends is worth 19 to their budget.
Absolutely.
But the main thing that CEO Catherine Kellerman told council is that, if tomorrow we had to cut 10% of our budget, that means we lose all ability to train, to do any kind of like manager sessions, to send people to other municipalities to learn how technologies work. It got much more dire than that. They said they would cut an entire garage, that they'd have to lay off 300 people. Yep. But training was the first thing on her list, that this goes away. We can't invest in our people. We can't even give them a barbecue sandwich to say thank you once a year. Will you be able to do that if we're also tightening the belt?
Well, I think we don't want to get to that point, right? We don't want people to work here and be absolutely miserable and not see an opportunity for personal growth. It's not how employers run these days, this day and age. And, to CEO Catherine Kellerman's point around the match is the majority of money that we put out, right? Our general fund is roughly $1.2 billion. We turn that into over $3 billion that goes to work in our communities. So
and that's
we're
through
about
matching grants and state additives, multipliers, things like that.
Exactly. So, ultimately, the taxpayer is getting a good deal because we can put more money to work in our community on issues that matter most to people: infrastructure, public safety, caring for our seniors, running elections, things like that, where it's really important for us to be able to have that money to match and put to work in our communities in partnership with a lot of community-based organizations. But
so those trainings, that investing in people, that's something you remain committed to. So that's part of the calculus of this tax increase.
It is. It is part of everything that we do. Is how do we invest in our people? And again, it's not a lot of money. It's more of saying, how do we remove barriers? So we ended mandatory drug testing for every single position. There's still things where if you're operating heavy machinery, if you're going into law enforcement, you have to take a drug test before you start. But there are many positions that you don't, right? And so actually, by investing in our people and removing barriers, we've saved money. So that's a great example of something. And again, if you can bring technical expertise in-house through training, that's one less contractor
or consultant or whatever
that you have to hire because you now have that expertise in-house. So in these investments are so nominal compared to $81 million deficit compared to a $1.2 billion budget, right? And so we can't just attack superficial things like how much one person gets paid or how much one training program costs, because you're never going to get to a balanced budget that way. You have to think about what the overall investments mean and what they ultimately deliver to the people of the county.
Stunning stalactites, stupendous stalagmites, flowing limestones frozen in time, formations that are bigger than most houses. Luray Caverns has so many jaw-dropping marvels, you have to see it to believe it. And after the awe and wonder of the caverns, explore local history at the Shenandoah Heritage Museum. Get a hands-on lesson in geology as you mine for gems at the Gem Sluice. See the oldest operating car in America at the Car and Carriage Caravan. And take a look at the simpler life on the streets of Toy Town Junction. For almost 150 years, families have been unlocking all the must-see wonders of nature that you can discover at Luray Caverns 365 days a year. Plan the perfect holiday adventure your whole family will love at luraycaverns.com. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. I want to take a moment to shout out my cat, Pistachio. You are so good. Thank you for always crawling onto my lap and purring whenever I'm stressed. This time of year, I am thinking a lot about gratitude. And while we might always remember to thank our loved ones or our pets, there's one person we often forget to thank: ourselves. And one way to make space for you and your feelings is through therapy, because sometimes cuddling your pet isn't enough, you need to talk it out. And therapy can help you learn to set boundaries, and it empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you've been thinking about giving therapy a try, one fast way to get connected with a therapist is with BetterHelp. It's entirely online, so it's flexible for your schedule, and all it takes to get started is filling out a quick questionnaire that pairs you with a therapist who fits your needs. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/citycast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/citycast.
You know, as you zoom out and look at what you discovered on day one, are you pissed at all at your predecessor, Rich Fitzgerald? Because he held the office for 12 years and he said a lot. I found, statements he made in 2021, 22, 23 saying, we will have to raise taxes at some point. We probably do need a property reassessment at some point. Mm-hmm. Now you're coming in. He never had to do it, but you maybe do, or you've at least put it out there that these are things that I think we need. Are you mad?
I mean, I'm someone who just tries to let it go, right? I don't have a time machine. I can't go back in time. I can't go do something 5 years ago. And, I was elected to lead, not to lie to people, not to tank our credit rating. As a county, I was elected to lead, and I'm going to lead in this moment. And it's hard and it's unpopular, but it's honest. And it's what's best for the long-term vibrancy of our region. And sure, I can sit there and be pissed off, but what does that doesn't do anything for the people of Allegheny County. What does something for them is when I can convene the teams that we need in order to solve problems. And so that's what we've been working on, is how to find efficiencies, how to create a budget that's fiscally responsible. And then, right now we're in the buy-in phase. How do we get people to buy into it? How do we get people to understand the core functions of county government? How do we get people to understand that when we're talking about a 2.2 mil increase only on the county portion of their property tax bill, that equates to $15 a month for the median assessed home in Allegheny County.
And the median assessed home value here in Allegheny County is about $110,000. Just to be clear, that is very different than the market price of your
Absolutely.
house. If you're looking at Zillow and you're like, what do houses cost in my neighborhood? Those are not the same thing.
Exactly.
Because we haven't had a reassessment in a long time, we are all assessed at a much lower value than what our house would sell for if we put it up tomorrow.
Absolutely. That's very important context.
I also think the county rate is worth talking about too, because I keep seeing the same number out there that it's a 46% increase in property taxes. And that is true, but percentages only matter when you know what they are a percent of, because we're moving from 4.73 mils to, if this passes, 6.93 mils. Like, those are still really small numbers. And the county portion of our tax bills are actually pretty small compared to what we pay in like school district taxes, for example.
Absolutely. So in some school districts, you're looking at, you may have up to a 20 mil that you pay to your school district.
She's pulled out her calculator. She's serious now.
Oh yeah, she's out here. She's looking at charts. She's looking at graphs. Yeah, some school districts millage rate. I'm looking at Brentwood is 37.4. Penn Hills is 30. Upper St. Clair is 29.6. So, you have those rates, and then you have the county portion, which is 4.73. And so it's so small compared to your school district taxes, sometimes to your municipal taxes. Obviously, there's 130 different municipal rates that exist.
And the mills part, I feel like everybody's always like, what the heck is a mill? It is hard to wrap your head around, but it is actually a simple equation. 1 mill is equal to $1 per $1,000 of assessed value.
Absolutely.
So talking about this popularity or unpopularity of a tax increase, if I look back at your predecessors, for example, Dan Innamorato, like, he was the last one that had to do a tax increase and a property reassessment. People were so mad that they turned his face into urinal cakes, that like in bars all over the county. Like, are you worried at all about like what this does for you 1 year out of the gate?
You know what? Like I said, I was elected to lead, but
you want to keep your job. I'm
sure I want to keep my job, but like, I didn't run and win this office because I'm thinking about the sexy office that I'm going to run for afterwards.
I don't think most people are like
using it as a stepping stone for my career, my political career. I don't care about that. I actually don't care. What I care about, and what I tell my team every day, is what is the right thing to do. What is the right thing to do in this moment? And the right thing to do right now is to have a fiscally responsible budget. And that means that we have to do a mill increase. And I am paying, I am righting the wrongs of the past with doing this. But we are also understanding that like times are tough for people. People are looking at the price of groceries and gas going up. They're worried about picking their kids up from school. They're not studying government finance. So it's our...
I am in the middle of the night for the last couple of weeks.
Late night reading. Just some light reading the comprehensive fiscal plan of the county.
I've never been this involved in city, county, and school district budget season. I can't say I love it. I'm going to be honest.
It's a little bit of a snooze fest. Not everyone's a nerd, and that's okay. So it's our duty as elected officials, as county employees, to explain the benefit. What do people get for their money? How do we offer transparency and access so that folks understand how their county tax dollars are going to work in their community and what is at stake if that stops?
Yeah, well,
and so that's what we're doing right now.
What is at stake? Like, say, because right now county council says that you don't have the votes, that they're not going to pass this as is. Of course, they still have more time to consider it. You make a proposed budget. Technically, they're the ones that actually change it, stamp it. It is county council's ultimately budget.
Yep.
But they're saying they're not going to do it. So what gets cut if they don't?
Well, we're working on compiling that for them to consider, because it's their responsibility. If they don't want to adopt this 2.2 mil increase, it's their responsibility to say, here's what we're going to cut.
I mean, it's human services, it's county parks, it's county police, and what happens when you call 911.
Exactly.
It's the health department, and we're still in a pandemic. Like, we're thinking about a lot of things, and what to your mind, like, what probably is on the chopping block?
So, right, we have to consider public safety. You brought up the 911 calls. Most of municipal functions filter through our centralized 911. There's still a couple municipalities that run their own 911 infrastructure, but the majority of people, when you call 911, you get connected with a county employee. For a long time, those folks were overworked, underpaid. That has been righted, and we're seeing our 911 operators at full complement.
It's such a high stress job.
Yes.
Like you were hearing people in
Absolutely.
absolute panic, crisis, confusion.
And they deserve the best possible work environment given the work that they do. So, we're talking about maybe going back in time where they're not at full complement, where people aren't staying at those jobs, where we can't support that workforce, right? I've been in states, Florida, where you call 911 and they place you on hold. And you're watching, like, there's a car accident right in front of you.
I get mad if I get put on hold with UPMC, like, let alone 911.
911. We don't want to go back. We funded a $81 million communications update for all of the first responders throughout the county. So all municipal level,
which is like the thing that
responders.
makes sure that if you call 911 from any municipality, mostly, then you get routed the right way. Because there's like 400 different places that have to all kind of talk to each other to make that happen.
Right. EMS, volunteer fire departments, municipal police, and they all need to be able to communicate, especially in the case of a disaster, right? So we are providing that infrastructure. So you're talking about public safety. You're talking about public infrastructure. We have 508 miles of road, 418 bridges, one mighty tunnel. It's the Armstrong Tunnel. And
there are other tunnels, but they are owned by different entities.
Yes. And we are responsible for the maintenance and repair of that infrastructure. And like I said, cost of asphalt has gone up 50%. And we had a bunch of structurally deficient bridges, and we've made an incredible amount of progress with our leaders at Department of Public Works, and those employees. They have done a tremendous job, righting the wrongs of the past and investing in our infrastructure. But we still have about 18 structurally deficient bridges, and we have just a few bridge inspectors on staff. We need to be able to continue to invest in that quality infrastructure, because I'll tell you, businesses, especially like manufacturers, aren't going to want to move to Allegheny County if they don't have good infrastructure that everyone's built on, right? And then we're talking about human services, and these are, critical things. And I think we think about the most vulnerable when we think about human services, but it is actually, they run a lot of programs that impact all of us. They fund, teen mental health supports. They fund the Area Agency on Aging, which means that seniors of all income ranges, if they need help, they have a place to go, and they can help connect them with services that they qualify for.
Well, and our cane centers, for example, the senior living centers.
Yep, and they're their own department too. But yes, part of the human services continuum, and with more long-term care facilities closing because there's not money to be made in it unless you're really putting people in a care deficit. That we are the public network that catches everyone that falls through the cracks, and where people are choosing to live out the remainder of their lives because we do offer such high quality care at our CANES facilities. But yes, it's also money that we put towards homelessness support, that we support kids who are in foster care, that we provide child care subsidies to working families. Human services is so broad and goes so deep into our communities. So,
and just to go back
absolutely
to
essential.
Yeah, the example that PRT gave again in that county council meeting was, bus service would end at 8 p.m. That there would be no T service at all over the weekends, which of course includes most of our big sporting events. It's so interwoven. And I guess when you talk to somebody, maybe when you talk to your own family, because I know they live here, did you tell your mama that you were going to propose a tax increase before you did it? What did they say, and how did you say, this is what we got to do?
I didn't. Well, and my mom's not a homeowner, so I am though.
Someone in your family.
I was the first woman in my family to own a home.
Congratulations.
And that was really important to me.
But you had to explain this. I'm sure, you always have to explain yourself to your family in a different kind of way,
Yeah.
But your choices are so much bigger than most of ours. You have a bit more power.
Holidays will be interesting, that's for sure.
Are you already getting it? Have they texted you, or they're are you serious?
They're good. I have friends and family who text me. They're explain how this works. And so I have a nice little 12 text thread that I send them that explains what millage is, what the increase means, how to calculate their average monthly payment increase.
I feel like maybe your comms department is going to have to turn your text thread into a public like education situation.
I think so. And I think we could do more work around that, explaining it to folks, because it's scary when you put out that percentage number, but then when you break it down, and I've had these one-on-one conversations in the community, and I'm like, I was like, what's your median assessed value? And some people know it, or some people I'm like, let's pull up the website now, let's look at it. Oh, it looks like your house is actually assessed at $80,000. And I increased the homestead exemption from $18,000 to $21,000. So let's take that $80,000, let's subtract $21,000 from it.
The homestead exemption is like a tax discount for homeowners.
Yep.
And do you know how many people in Allegheny County either qualify for it or use it? Like, I wonder if there's an education component there too.
Yes. So yes, we could also do that. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but right. If you own your home and you live in your home, then you qualify for a homestead exemption. And so, right, then you're talking about, that assessed value is now, we calculate the tax bill off of $59,000. And what you're looking at is actually more like $7.50 per month increase. And then people are like, oh, okay, that's like a coffee or like 2 coffees a month out, right? And then it puts it in perspective. But
those 2 coffees a month, you say, are what's going to continue to fund things like fixing fridges and keeping 911 working and making sure we have tea service in this county.
Absolutely. And that's, I know that families are struggling right now and bills are higher, but like, this is not my first choice, but it is our last resort, because I also know how vital all of those things are to people. And we're also setting ourselves up for long-term success as a region, because all of this leads into our ability to grow our economy and to grow our population. So this budget also invests in economic development. For the longest time, county economic development was just a pass-through for that state and federal money, where we skimmed off the top and took administrative fees. Mm-hmm. But this budget is investing in economic development to say, hey, how do we actually start to aggressively go after businesses who want to move here? How do we grow the entrepreneurs and the startups that are here? How do we actually commercialize the research that's happening at our universities and put buildings on the tax rolls, create more jobs? That makes a stronger tax base and gives us more money so the burden can be shared more broadly. But we're also designing economic development in the sense that we're supporting Main Street businesses, we're supporting arts and culture, we're talking about workforce program, so that as we grow the pie, people can benefit from that shared prosperity, right? Or that they can share in the prosperity of it. And then, and making sure that we're embedding things that are critical to quality of life, which means that we're talking about childcare when we're talking about economic development. It means that we're talking about cleaning our air and water. It means that we are also saying, hey, community groups that work with immigrants and refugees, how do we better partner? Because we know that we're not just like, the one way to grow is to be a welcoming place where immigrants want to move. And a lot of immigrants that move here are entrepreneurial, and they start their own businesses and they create jobs and they revitalize communities. And we need to recognize their contributions as well. So, we're setting ourselves up for long-term sustainable growth. And this is something that has never happened at the county before. I didn't inherit a strategic plan for growth, but that's not going to stop me from making one and working with our partners like the Allegheny Conference, like business groups and private employers throughout the region, like community organizations, like workforce programs, like our Workforce Investment Board Partner for Work. Like, we all are going to come together and say, how do we set Allegheny County up for success long term?
So you've got this big vision, but you also have to sell counsel on it.
Yeah.
What's your prognosis for, the discussion tonight, for the next one that comes, and for, ultimately whether or not they rubber stamp this, whether they pass a tax increase for Allegheny County?
Well, we continue to be in contact with members of council every day. And
did you tell them this was coming in advance? Like, did you meet with them before you?
Yes, they did get a advance notice.
Did they get notice? Did you have support? Because everything we're hearing publicly is oh my gosh, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know it was coming. And once again, Rich Fitzgerald, your predecessor, did talk about it in county council meetings prior. It's just, they didn't need it right then. So maybe they weren't thinking about it in those terms. I guess, did you propose this without the votes, or did you think you had the votes and now it's becoming a bigger conversation?
We proposed the right thing. We introduced, council knew about it before the public announcement, which is why there were some people who leaked the conversation, and it was on some news sources before I actually did my budget address. And we also, we found a transcript from 2022 with council member Sam DeMarco speaking with then County Executive Rich Fitzgerald, and, County Executive Fitzgerald saying, yeah, we are going to need a tax increase. We are going to need a reassessment, and some county executive and some county council in the future is going to have to do that. And Mr. DeMarco thanked him for introducing a responsible budget and then voted for it. This is a member of council that is still there, right? So them clutching their pearls and saying, oh my gosh, how could this happen? You were present and you were given the information and you chose to make decisions. And now we have to deal with the consequences of those decisions, right? And none of us have a time machine. So let's be clear-eyed about those challenges, and let's be honest about the solutions that can move us all forward.
But did they say that they, behind closed doors, supported you before all of this became as public as it is now?
Our goal with the presentation was giving them a sense of the severity of the deficit and also where we aligned with other counties, right?
If y'all want to see the presentation, it's actually very short. Not a lot of slides.
Yeah.
It's online.
Yeah. And then, so we put it online, and we also looked at other counties around Pennsylvania, right? There are neighboring counties that are also finding themselves in this position where they're doing tax increases, and they're they're commissioner model. So they have 3 commissioners, 2 of which are Republicans, and they're raising taxes because they realize that if they do not, then they don't have the money to fund critical services that their people expect them to fund.
But did you think council was with you?
I don't know. I mean, I think that they all operate independently. So my job is to give them information and explain the situation and say, I hope that we can find a solution moving forward. But like you said, it's ultimately up to them to pass it. I don't feel wronged by anyone on council for being critical. I get it, right? Like our job now is to find common ground and to find a budget that is going to deliver for the people of the county. I'm not going to negotiate against myself. I introduced an honest budget that addresses all of the concerns, funds programs that are critical, and helps us grow in the future so that we don't need to rely, so the burden is shared amongst more people. And if they have an alternative vision, I look forward to seeing that. But it's going to be their responsibility for telling me what they want to cut.
Yeah. And council will continue to discuss this. The budget is due to be passed by the end of the year. And property reassessment, a full county-wide one, could still be coming. But I've heard you say before, we have to be financially sound before we can even enter that process, because it's so long and it's very expensive.
It's very expensive. Projected about $30 million to do that, and it would take between 2 and 3 years to complete. So,
and it's state law that if we do enter a property reassessment period, the millage rate has to come down again. So we could, in theory, pass this, the property taxes go up, then we do reassessment, and then our millage rate comes right back down.
Yes, because we have to be absolutely revenue neutral at the county. So we have to, if we do a reassessment, we have to lower the millage accordingly so that the county ends up with the same amount of dollars at the end of the day. We cannot raise revenue through a reassessment.
You know, I asked Mayor Gainey this question, Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey, last week, and I'm curious what you think too. You know, why are we in this moment where the city, the county, and the school district are all having so many budget problems? Why are we so pinched in this moment? And what would you say to someone who, you know, looks at this and feels kind of dire about the place where they live?
I think that this is something that is universally felt. So while it seems like, oh gosh, what's going on in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, like this is happening in counties across the Commonwealth. This is happening in communities across the nation. And I think going back to what I said in the beginning, which is it's a confluence of difficulties. So while it does seem dire in some respects, it is a moment in time. It is a moment in time. And if we can get beyond this, if we can get beyond this budget, you know, we see a drop off with challenges. So we're not going to have to pay out money to commercial property owners anymore. We've now plugged the budget holes that ARPA, American Rescue Plan money, and the other federal monies were plugging in the past. You know, we've set ourselves up for, you know, a long-term growth, and we're making investments today that are going to pay off 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Sara Innamorato, County Executive, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. A reminder, county executives just propose budgets. It is actually council that makes the final call. So if you want to hear how our county councilors are talking about all of this, I highly suggest attending or tuning in to the next public hearing. There's one today at 5 p.m. and another one on Wednesday. And if you cannot make those, you can also watch them all on YouTube. Shout out, by the way, to whoever is doing the camera work on those, because sometimes y'all zoom into people's faces, and I gotta say, it makes the whole thing so much more entertaining. All right, y'all, we will definitely be talking about this again once we know how it's gonna shake out, and we will be back tomorrow with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon. What was the experience of voting like for you this year? You went early.
I did. I went to the Soldiers and Sailors site on the first day it was open, and I set a stopwatch to see how long it would take for me to go through the process, because I did not request a mail-in ballot. So I had to fill out my form while I was there, and it was about 11 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, did you time it because you're an executive and you want to know, or because you're a millennial and we time everything?
Probably a little bit of both.